Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. Today, I will talk about Yamanaka Sensei. There are many inspiring stories from his life, but in this video, I will only focus on the story he narrated when giving his graduation speech at Kindai University. This good intention began when I was inspired by a speaker session delivered by Steve Jobs at Stanford University. This video has given extraordinary inspiration in my life, especially when I was down and not motivated, not about my life. At the time I made this video, more than 43 million people had watched his speech video, and more than 25,000 people commented on the same video uploaded onto Stanford University YouTube channel platform. In contrast to that, graduation speech conveyed by Yamanaka Sensei has just been watched by 3 million people and commented only 637 comments at the same time I made this video. Regardless, the Steve Jobs fame is higher than Yamanaka Sensei. However, I am convinced that if Yamanaka Sensei's video was also delivered by English subtitles, the number of views and comments would be much greater because more people would have been inspired by the message conveyed by Yamanaka Sensei. About his brief introduction, Shinya Yamanaka is a Japanese stem cell researcher and a Nobel Prize laureate. He is a professor and the Director Emeritus of Center for iPSL Research and Application, Kyoto University. In 2012, he and John Gurdon were awarded the Nobel Prize for Physiology or Medicine for the discovery that mature cells can be converted to stem cells. Okay, without overdue, I will give a brief explanation of the graduation speech presented by the Yamanaka Sensei at Kindai University. The graduation speech video itself was divided into two parts. The first video is entitled Sayouga Yuma Story, while the second video tells the story of Sayouga Yuma in a version of Yamada Sensei's life. In the first part of video, Yamanaka Sensei narrated the story of a grandfather who lived a village in China and was never happy or sad quickly about every event that befalls and colors his life. The grandfather lived with one horse and one son. One day his horse, which was the only property he owned at that time, suddenly disappeared from his stable, and it was not known where the horse went. Hearing the sad news, all the neighbors came to the grandfather's house and tried to cheer him up. His neighbor said, "I am so sorry to hear that. Hopefully the horse will return to its stable soon." But the grandfather instead said, "There will definitely be good news after this." It turned out that the grandfather's prediction was in accordance with reality. The lost horse turns out to come home with more horses by the same or better quality. The same neighbor came back to the grandfather's house and said, "Wow, you must be very happy because you now has more horses." But the grandfather instead responded to the neighbor's words by saying, "Possibly, there will be bad things happen after this," and it turned out that what the grandfather suspected was true again. His only son fell from his horse and broke his leg while riding a horse. Again, the same neighbor came back to the grandfather's house and said, "I am so sorry to hear that. I hope you remain steadfast and patient in accepting this problem." But the grandfather again instead said, "There will definitely be good news after this." And it turned out that grandfather's prediction was correct again. There was a war in that country where young people, including those living in the village, had to participate in the war. However, because the grandfather's son was physically disabled, the son was allowed by the country not to participate in the war. Not long after the war ended, all the families in the village received news that all their sons had died in the war. Yamanaka Sensei also reflected Sayouga Yuma story in his life. He was grateful because he has graduated from a renowned medical school in Osaka, which has been his dream since he was a child after seeing his father suffered from a serious illness when he was still in elementary school. Instead of getting happy with his first workplace, it turned out that he just started his Sayouga Yuma story. After graduating from medical school, he didn't expect that his first workplace would have been such an unpleasant place. Every day he was always scolded by his boss. Even though his name is Yamanaka, he was sometimes called Yamanaka by his boss, which in Japanese, Jama means someone who is always annoying. In addition to that, at the same time, his father has passed away. He regretted that he couldn't cure his father's illness, even though he graduated from medical school. After thinking for a long time, he finally decided to change his profession to become a researcher. He decided to study again at a university in America to become a more professional researcher. After that, he found his passion as a researcher and intended to return to Japan with same profession and ambition. However, he discovered that the research environment he received while in America was completely different from the one he received in Japan. Realizing this, he became less confident in his life path as a researcher. Instead of becoming the researcher he dreamed of, he instead became a breeder and caretaker of hundreds of mice in the lab. He also felt tired and lost because of his daily work, which only involved dealing with hundreds of mice. After realizing that his life as a researcher in Japan was not going smoothly, he finally decided to change his profession again to become a doctor from zero step. His intention to become a doctor became much stronger after he spent a day that would change his life. While walking around, he found a land without buildings surrounded by beautiful and quite strategic scenery. He planned to buy the land and also build a house on the land with the salary he will get if he becomes a doctor, since in Japan the salary of a doctor is higher than that of a researcher. Not long after that, he finally came to the housing agency and carried out several land purchase procedures. Until one day before signing the contract with housing agency, he suddenly got a call from his mother. His mother, who knew about her son's intention to buy land, told him to stop realizing his dream, because last night she met her dead husband in a dream, and told her to stop Yamanaka from signing the land purchase contract. Yamanaka was surprised by his mother's request, which was beyond reason. Yamanaka was surprised by his mother's unreasonable request, because why did his mother believe in dreams that cannot be explained by science? But because the request came from his mother, he finally had second thoughts about hastening his intention to buy land. Finally, he called the housing agency to postpone the process of signing the land purchase contract until following day. However, on the same day in the afternoon, he received a call from the same housing agency saying that the land he intended to buy had to be handed over to another person who had no hesitation in signing the contract. As a result of this incident, he finally became hated towards his mother and also his father, who came from dreams. Finally, he quit to return to being a doctor and continued his work as a researcher. 6 years after that incident, he finally met iPS-cells, and in 2012 he won the Nobel Prize in Medicine because of his discoveries in the field of iPS-cells. At the end of her graduation speech, he repeated her words that getting the Nobel Prize was not the end of his塞翁が馬 story. There were also several unexpected bad events after receiving the prize. The story he told reminds us that everyone has their own塞翁が馬, including me personally, who has recently experienced mountain peaks and valleys in my life. At the time, either we got difficult or happy time, we must remember again the proverb塞翁が馬, which means stay calm with everything happens regardless good or bad things happened. I also remembered what Allah says in Surah Al-Baqarah verse 216.
Perhaps you hate a thing, and it is good for you, and perhaps you love a thing, and it is bad for you, and Allah knows, while you know not.